Hello YouTube, this is Dazzathecameraman. Today is Friday, October 14th, 2016, and this is a follow-up Hangout video to my recent video with Astronomy Live, discussing the video by Nibiru Planet X 2016, the footage that NASA does not want you to see. So I've got Scott from Nibiru News, Nibiru Planet X 2016, joining me here now, and I've also got Astronomy Live. Also in the background we have Sean Hufford, who is purely here as my technical man for the Hangout, this being the second live Hangout that I've done. So thank you, Sean, for helping us with that. So welcome Scott from Nibiru News, Planet X 2016, and welcome Astronomy Live.
Hi David, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Astronomy Live?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you for hosting this.
You're welcome. Okay, so this is a follow-up. Now, I have to say that following the upload of the Hangout video between Astronomy Live and I was contacted by Scott from Nibiru Planet X 2016. I'll just call you Nibiru News for short, or Scott. And I have to say that Scott was very polite in his emails that he sent to me. He was obviously very keen to explain the situation, and we subsequently talked on Skype for some time, which was actually quite refreshing to actually have one of the people that I've been debunking actually make an approach like this, and to be quite respectful and try to put forward his side of the story. So we're here to clear up a few matters, and so I'll just let you speak for a while here, Scott, and you can explain a little bit about where things are at and realization and what happened behind the scenes for you regarding this video that you uploaded, Scott.
Okay, well, first things first. I don't have or come from an astronomy background in any way, shape, or form. So whenever I got this video footage, it was coming from a person that had been emailing us quite a bit of information. Very good photographs, telescopic photographs. And this went on for about a month. And, you know, it seemed like he kind of built his credibility up with us because, you know, we do scrutinize the photographs as much as possible. I mean, you know as well as I do, when I'm getting 2,000 emails a day, it's very hard to, you know, scrutinize and vet and, you know, prove every single photograph. But anyways, make a long story short, he sent us this urgent email, and it included that video footage. But the video footage was, like you see, you have the original. It was, and I really didn't think anything of it. I'll be quite honest with you. I didn't think anything of it. Now, I've seen these images before, and yes, I know there's dates on them and things of that nature. But what I actually thought was he was trying to zoom in on it so you can see the footage a little bit better. So anyways, you know, we went back and forth with my team of people here, and we decided, okay, well, let's go with his story. And his story was like the heading that I used, the footage that NASA doesn't want you to see. So we went ahead and went with it. And, you know, that's basically it right there. Then I saw your comments, and I am a very respectful person. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, bottom line. And after talking with you today, David, you know, it shed some different light on it. And you know the conversation that we had. And I don't care about the footage. The subject that we touched on in the latter part of our conversation meant more to me than debunking some NASA footage. You know what I'm talking about, correct?
Yeah, sure I do. Would you like to expand on that?
Well, I mean, if you want to expand on it because you know more about the story of this young lady.
Okay, so when I was talking with Scott on Skype, I explained one of the reasons why I do this debunking, as they call it, I get a number of messages and emails from people who are terrified that there is a brown dwarf or large planet coming through our solar system. They're quite fearful, anxious, and some of them are potentially suicidal. Now, back in the lead up to 2012, the December 21 hype, there was a young lady in England by the name of Isabel Taylor, 16 years old, and she hanged herself over her fears over the 2112 events that were coming up. She had been researching videos and so on online, and it seems that she felt that she didn't want to face the events that were supposed to be happening on the 21st of December 2012. So she took her own life. And this story is just the tip of the iceberg of what actually does happen. We only hear a few stories like this, and I only get a few messages from people who are in this situation. But the danger is that with these sort of videos that are not true, for example, the Mayan events of 2012 obviously proved to be false, and people have been talking about Nibiru coming through the solar system for many years now. In fact, it was Nancy Leader who said that Nibiru was going to arrive in 2003 and cause all sorts of havoc and pole shift and earthquakes and tsunamis and so on. And here we are in 2016, and she's still saying that Nibiru is coming. So there is a real danger for vulnerable people that they may actually harm themselves or take their own lives as a result of fear-mongering. And this is why I do the debunking work from the point of view of an astronomer. And I'll expand on that a little bit further because I don't want to get too off topic at this stage. I do want to come back to the actual discussion of the video that was in question that Scott uploaded and what was actually in the video, because now Scott has actually taken down his original video, and credit to you for doing that. But the problem is that in your follow-up video, Scott, you actually forgot to mention what was in the video. So maybe you'd like to clarify that now.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I was pretty tired. I keep some very, very long hours, and I was thinking and trying to put that all together. And I have to apologize to Scott also. Dave told me I made a mistake with your channel name with the Astronomy Live. I apologize for that. But it's just I haven't been getting a lot of sleep lately. You know, 3 hours a day. It's really starting to catch up to me. But yeah, I found that very incredible that you know, that was the moon, and I'm still I'm still trying to swallow this, Dave. You know, I feel very betrayed by the person that sent the email. You know, and I kind of feel like we were set up, pretty much. You know. And for me to be a grown man and be so naive about that, but you know, you have to be able to trust people to an extent. You know, maybe I took that trust a little too far, but I tried to make good. You know, all of my intentions were good. Trying to make the video, you know, quickly this morning and go about all of my other business. So, you know, it wasn't perfect, but it was the best that I had to put forth. And yeah, I guess that was the moon.
Right. Well, I believe that you've been sincere, as I say, in the way that you contacted me, the conversation that we've had on Skype, the fact that you removed your video, which already had 20,000 views by that stage. So if you were only after the views and any income from it, then I'm sure that you would have left that video up. So credit to you, and also credit to you for doing the follow-up video. And I accept that you've been very tired, and it was a simple oversight to actually forget to say what was actually in the video, that it was the moon. So Astronomy Live, maybe you would like to just recap on the content of the video and what we're seeing there?
Sure. So the first thing I have up here, these are the images from stereo behind Core 2 that were in Nibiru News's original video. You can see here hopefully you can see the whole thing. We have up at the top stereo behind Core 2 and down at the bottom February 20th, 2007. And the whole process here takes about a week for this to occur in Core 2. Core 2 is the wide field coronagraph on a stereo spacecraft. And so I'm just going to play the images here. These are at 3-hour intervals. I manually downloaded these images. You can just do a batch download, which in hindsight I probably should have done, but there were some caveats. There were some reasons why I did this with 3-hour intervals to make it easier to sync up with frames from another program that I have, which you'll see in a minute. But here comes the moon, and it takes this long arcing path, which I can see why, to the uninitiated or to someone who doesn't have a lot of experience analyzing images like this would look unusual if intuitively you expect to see, what I suppose you would expect to see a more flat or maybe circular path. It looks elliptical here, right? It looks kind of like a comet that's coming in and then coming close to the sun and then going back out, but that's not really what's going on here. So the stereo behind spacecraft was just leaving the Earth-Moon system at this time in February 2007. And in fact, I think I'm going to skip ahead here just to put this in better context. I rendered some images in ORSA. ORSA is a program, it's a free program that you can use to do solar system integrations. So you can integrate over time the motion of the solar system and account for the gravity of the planets, Earth's moon, all of these things upon objects in space, including the stereo spacecraft. So I imported the stereo spacecraft and its trajectory starting at the point where it had a close approach to the moon. So it got a gravity assist from our moon on its way out from Earth. And that's where this starts. And I'm going to play the frames here, and you can see how the orbit of stereo behind evolves over time due to the gravity of the moon and the Earth. And it's in this highly elliptical orbit that takes it a long time to get away from Earth, but over time it gets further away, and in February it finally breaks free of Earth's gravity, and that's when you'll suddenly see that elliptical orbit switch. And it takes basically a full month. The moon goes around Earth one time, and then when it comes back around, that's when it passes between stereo and the sun. And that's right about here is where you start to see it in the Core 2 images. And so right at about this point, you'll see the orbit, there it goes, the orbit of stereo behind suddenly switch. So at that point, it broke free. And the moon, during that time, was actually passing through the coronagraph images, and at one point it even passed directly in front of the sun, as seen from the extreme ultraviolet images like this. So you have all these different cameras on the stereo spacecraft that are imaging this event. And you can still find those in the archive on the stereo website. And a few weeks ago, back in September, there were some videos that were discussing these extreme ultraviolet images, because you have these moon transits occurring, and they look similar in nature but not the same as the moon transits we get on the Solar Dynamics Observatory images, the SDO images. SDO orbits Earth at geostationary distance, so it's much closer to Earth and closer to the moon than stereo behind was. And if we render these frames in in ORSA, looking from stereo behind's perspective out towards the sun, you can see this white circle here. This is a simulated edge of the field of view. This is where the field of view would cut off on the Core 2 coronagraph. And so if I play the frames here, you can see that the moon takes the trajectory, the same trajectory that we saw in the actual images. And this is just an effect of the moon's orbit combined with stereo behind's motion. It's not just the moon that's moving, it's also the stereo spacecraft that's moving and getting further away from the Earth-Moon system and traveling out. And that's why it looks like that. So if we overlay the two, if we overlay the images from ORSA and the images from the stereo behind spacecraft, we find that we get a very good match for what we're seeing in the actual images. Keep in mind, the images are aligned relative to the edge of the field of view, so I've aligned them based on that rendered circle relative to the Core 2 images. And this assumes that the stereo spacecraft is pointing straight at the sun. It's basically pointing straight at the sun. There's a small discrepancy there, but it's not large enough to really matter. But you can see here's the moon's expected position, and then you can see the actual images. Again, it's a little bit janky because they're at 3-hour intervals versus 30-minute intervals for the ORSA images. But you can see it's a good match there. That is the moon. It's the size that the moon is supposed to be, and it's traveling in the direction the moon is supposed to be. in the images based on the trajectory of the stereo behind spacecraft. So that's what that is, and it's simply an effect of stereo's motion combined with the moon's motion. So that's a quick and short summary of it.
Right, and that's an excellent analysis. And of course, we must make the point that stereo behind was launched in 2007, and so it was on its way out of the Earth-Moon orbit at that time, and this is why the moon was seen from stereo behind in these images.
You know what? I had a question, if I could.
Sure, go ahead.
Go for it.
You know, I've seen a lot of these images many times. How far away is how far away is this image being taken from the sun?
Well, the sun isn't.
How
far is the ground? It's about the same distance as the Earth from the sun. Let's see if I can come back here.
So what is it, about 90, about 93 million miles away, somewhere about that average?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious because, yeah, I've seen some of these images before, and what was confusing me, I'll be quite honest, and you probably know this figure, but like the diameter of the moon. I mean, you know, our moon is very small compared to the size of the sun.
Well, yeah, keep in mind that the stereo behind spacecraft is much farther from the Earth and Moon than would normally be the case if you were standing on Earth or if you were a satellite that was orbiting Earth. So this is about the point where it was crossing into that Core 2 image. And you can see here the massive distance between stereo behind up here and the moon over here versus the Earth-Moon distance. So you're at, you know, some multiple of the Earth-Moon distance here, and so the moon's apparent size is going to be smaller. However, an astronomical unit is about 92, 93 million miles, somewhere in that ballpark, and so it's a huge amount of distance. The Earth-Moon distance, I forget what it is in miles, but in kilometers, it's on average 384,400 kilometers, and so it's a small fraction of an astronomical unit. So the stereo behind spacecraft, you know, as a percentage, it's much farther away from the moon now, but expressed as a percentage, the percent difference between the Earth's distance from the sun and stereo behind's distance from the sun is basically insignificant.
So the size of the moon being like roughly a little over, what, 2,100 and some miles in diameter, and the diameter of the sun, what, roughly 860,000 miles from, I don't know. I'm not, like I said, I'm not that up on, you know, measurements, kilometers, but my problem is, you know, the distance of the craft, the size of the moon, the size of the sun. The moon should have looked like a little speck instead of such a prominent sphere, you know, moving around the sun. So that's what kind of caught me when I viewed the original video. If I would have had any thoughts in my mind that was the moon orbiting the sun, then, you know, things would have been very, very different, because I would have expected the moon to be almost completely invisible in that footage. I would have expected it to be a minuscule dot in this video footage, you know, compared to the moon, compared to the size of the sun. Again, to me, it should have been a little dot. But again, you know, I'm not a trained astronomer. You know, I don't hold degrees in these fields, you know, and I have to take your expertise and your word for it. But, you know, I'm just glad we got it all cleared up, you know. And as far as Dave, as far as the money issue goes with the monetization on these videos, listen, I take heat from these trolls on my YouTube channel consistently, constantly, and they know nothing about me personally. I don't need the money from YouTube, but there's something that other people don't understand. If you don't monetize your videos, and if you know anything about YouTube and how their algorithms work. YouTube, Google's just one big advertising agency. So, you know, they're looking to make their clients money. So if videos are doing very, very well, naturally, you're going to get pushed up there. You're going to get pushed up in the list. And I worked for 22 years in international marketing and advertising. I've been all over the world. I've worked with some of the largest corporations in the world. So, you know, when it comes to things like this, well, this is my area of expertise. And I know how YouTube works, and I know how their algorithms work. And if you do not monetize, you know, your videos are, you know, they're not going to reach people. But as far as the money goes that you make from YouTube, now you know, I mean, your videos are monetized. Hey, you know, you have to put 4, 5, 6 videos up a day, and you better get 25, 35, 40,000 views a day on each and every one of those to make a considerable income. And I'll be quite honest with you, the last deposit that Google made in my account was about $2,400. And I used that money to pay the people that work with me and help me. But, you know, I'm just putting that out there because these, you know, these trolls just really, really rip you to shreds when it comes to this monetization. And I actually, you know, I just lost my whole train of thought. I just, the whole point I was trying to make, I just kind of lost it. I'm still very sleepy, but anyways, guys, go ahead.
Yes, I understand that you were saying that without the monetization, basically your videos won't get views. They won't get out there if I'm understanding you correctly.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, there's a question I need to ask you about the follow-up video. I noticed that you presented the video again with the dates and times and spacecraft details. I noticed that the captions were also on the video. I'm supposed to be screen sharing that video at the moment, but for some reason it's not coming up. All I've got is a black screen. Sean, any ideas on that?
You know what, Dave? It took me hours to try to find the actual video that I think the individual that emailed it to me. This was the only video that I could find on YouTube in the time frame that I had. Because if you remember, before we got off the phone, I told you I'm going to get on this right now. And within, what, a few minutes, I already had the video taken down. My word. That much is 100%.
To touch on Daz's issue right now, it looks like you're trying to share and it flickers every now and then onto the actual video. So go ahead and stop your screen share and restart it. See if that'll correct it.
Okay, I've stopped the share. It hasn't gone back to my avatar. I'll try again though.
Okay, now it's gone back to your avatar. Are you using multiple monitors?
No, just the one.
That is very, very odd.
It's coming up, but when I talk, it seems to disappear.
Try to present your screen. You use a little pull-down window or pull-down arrow next to your avatar.
Present to everyone. Okay, I've still got just a black screen. So what I might do is get Astronomy Live.
Are you trying to full screen it or no?
No, just the browser window.
That is really, really odd.
Okay, never mind. What I wanted to ask you, Scott, Nibiru News, was the follow-up video that you posted. I noticed that the video had the original captions that we saw in your original video. So the video that you re-uploaded, did you reinsert those original captions, or was that from the original video? Can you just?
I had taken. Oh man, it took me about a couple of hours cruising through YouTube, and I was trying to find the original video that this individual basically copied and cropped and sent us the footage. I still have my original footage, and you know, I was trying to compare it. That's what took me so long to get the video created this morning. But yeah, I finally found it, and I used the original that was not sent to us, but what I found on YouTube. So I'm going out on a limb saying that that's where this individual got that footage. So I don't know how much of that footage is on YouTube, you know, but I wanted to get something up there quick, and you know, it looked and matched pretty identical.
Right. Okay. So that clears up a question for me, because when I saw your video, I had wondered if the video creation was entirely your own, and suddenly we had the date and time and spacecraft details in the original captions. It almost looked to me as if you know, the video with all the data was already there. But I understand that what you're saying is that you searched YouTube, you found the original video that was sent to you that wasn't cropped, and you used that in your follow-up video, correct?
Yes. Remember how I told you I'm a good investigator? Well, how I found that is when I was searching through these video clips. If you remember, in my original video, that stereo image had some white lettering that scrolled across the screen, and that was not my white lettering. That lettering was originally in the footage that was sent to me. So as I was cruising through YouTube and trying to find the footage and watch this video and that video, and then all of a sudden this one came up, and it had some other video footage attached to it. I think one of them was kind of a green, like a lime green image, similar to what we were watching there. In the red image, it was green, and then this red one came up. And then when that red one came up, I saw those white letters scrolling across, and they matched identically with what footage I had. So I think that was a 100% match. And it came from a website, or excuse me, a YouTube channel that was titled Debbie Blue, DEBIBLUE. That's the channel name. And the image in the video was, if I'm not mistaken, 5 years old.
Okay, thank you, Scott. That helps to clear that up. And it certainly seems that somebody has deliberately been up to some hijinks sending the cropped video to you in the hope that you would upload the cropped video without that data. Obviously, the data allows us to check back on the date and time to confirm the actual event. And I often see different videos supposedly showing Nibiru or UFOs or something bizarre in the stereo or SETI images. And when you've got the date and time, it's very easy to go to the archive, check the date and time, confirm the images, and use suitable astronomy software to actually work out what's going on. Most of the time, the objects turn out to be planets. Sometimes they are errors. Sometimes they're from cosmic ray strikes on the sensor. There is a very good section on the stereo website that shows examples of the sorts of things that you're going to see and what actually causes them, and they give specific examples. So I think, you know, if I was in your shoes, I think I'd probably be quite annoyed with the person who sent you the cropped video. And personally, if it was me, I think I'd be going after them to try and expose them for what they did.
Well, like I mentioned to you this morning, I don't have an identity that goes with that Gmail account, and the video or the email started coming in, like I said, about a month ago. Short introduction, mentioned they were an astronomer. They had connections with NASA. They were sitting on this video footage for many, many years. This was video footage that NASA never wanted anyone to see. There are so many other things out there in the solar system, 5 suns that we don't know about, you know, on and on and on. Some of it was a little unbelievable, but then there were some photographs that came with it. And again, You know, I'm not an astronomer. I'm not a physicist. You know, I'm not an astronaut. I don't work for NASA. But the photographs were pretty intriguing. Now, how do you go about verifying that? I guess you have to find yourself a professional astronomer. And, you know, I live southeast of the city of Pittsburgh. And maybe I should have went down to, you know, like Carnegie Mellon University or something. Full of myself there. You can see my dilemma. It's very hard if I have to verify every single photograph, every single video to that type of an extent. You know, very costly and very time consuming, and then trying to find someone that's willing to help me. Because I would love to be in an observatory. I would love to take a peek through one of these massive telescopes. I'd like to see something with my own eyes instead of a video or a photograph.
Right.
Lucky, you know, you get to see.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I meant, you know, in your profession and, you know, being professional astronomers, very well educated and trained, you know, you've gotten to peer into space through these, you know, these telescopes. I only wish one day that I would be able to do that, just see things with my own eyes, you know. But I hope you understand where I'm coming from with trying to verify all of these photographs, because my subscribers are the ones that are sending the photographs in from all over the world. And I get so many, like I told you this morning, from New Zealand and from Australia, down there in your neck of the woods, as we say.
Sure. Now, just to clarify, neither Astronomy Live nor I are professional astronomers. We are amateur astronomers. We're not armchair astronomers. We are actually real amateur astronomers who use observatories and telescopes and do imaging and so forth. I have to give credit to Astronomy Live. I've often said that as an astronomer, he could wipe the floor with me. What he doesn't know isn't worth knowing. And he is my go-to man when I need to know things. He's also very capable with the mathematics involved with the astronomy. So he is very able. I am a member of my local astronomical society. I also serve on the committee, and now and then I present talks and so on at the meetings at our local astronomy society, the public meetings. I also guide people. We had a meeting on Tuesday night, and fortunately the clouds parted and we had the moon there. So I fired up the 14-inch telescope and was showing people the moon through that telescope. So we're not professionals, but we're serious amateur astronomers, and we're always happy to look at videos or photos. You don't need to go to an observatory to have them verified. I'm sure that Astronomy Live would be happy to look at images for you. Astronomy Live?
Absolutely, you know, and I think you ought to do the obligatory plug for VORTEX while you're at it too, because, you know, there's a lot of us out there who are happy to, you know, look at these claims and provide feedback on them.
Absolutely. I'll keep you guys very busy. I might have to put you on my payroll. I'm dead serious. I mean, we literally get about 2,000 emails a day. And I literally have one person that sits there for 4 or 5 hours, and you know, going through the emails, responding to each and every one of them, not with some form letter or anything like that, because I think that's just awful. But and then, you know, taking the video footage or the photographs, and many of them come with 5, 6, 10, 12 pictures. And then, you know, putting them in files, and then, you know, me looking at them later on, and, you know, my photographer looking at them later on, and, you know, coming to some decisions. So I'm not trying to, you know, let people think I'm running some Mickey Mouse operation. I do have staff. Like I said, I do pay them out of the proceeds that come from our YouTube, Google, banner advertisements, our monetization. And again, it's nothing that's going to make any of us super rich. But my whole goal is to just, you know, bring some awareness. That's what I want to do with my videos. I still believe regardless of other influences. I still believe that in Carlos Ferrata's findings, and I still believe very much in Dr. Harrington's findings. I've read their books, their papers. Carlos Ferrata to me is like an Einstein. I mean, I think he should be, in the same class. The man was an absolute genius. Some of his predictions, I think all of his predictions actually came true. So it takes a lot for me to discount what these men invested years of research in. I mean, I hope you gentlemen understand me on that aspect. And I would actually hope to God that there is nothing in our solar system like this nemesis. And I would hope to God that nothing would ever approach us like that. Because like I said earlier, I have 2 young teenage children that I want to see go to college. I want to see them grow up. Not that I'm looking forward to being a grandfather. I don't even like the word at my age right now, but I want to look forward to life. And if there is something that we're not being told, because everyone sitting here in this chat right now knows that our governments do not tell us the whole entire truth on every matter. And if it was between us and them, they'd let us all die. And I've done so much investigations into all of these underground bunkers and, hey, where's all the money? Why are we having all of these troop movements in the United States? Okay, because right now we have over 100,000 UN troops in the United States divided up into troops of 10,000. They're all in the Midwest, none of them on the coast. So there is definitely some funny business going on here in the United States. There were some alerts this past summer over there in Germany and a few other countries, for people to stock up on food, water, 10 days, 21 days. So you can see where maybe you want to call it my paranoia begins. So you start to think that definitely something is occurring. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ed Dames. Anybody familiar with Ed Dames?
Yes, I have seen something of Ed Danes on YouTube and so on. I haven't investigated in great depth. I would like to sort of change direction. We've sort of covered
Sure.
about the moon video and cleared that up, and the circumstances surrounding it. I would like to.
Sorry, I just wanted, before we moved off that subject, I saw a question in the chat I wanted to get to that was about that.
Okay, I'll just quickly summarize, and then I'll hand over to you, Astronomy Live. That's what I want to do. I just wanted to say that what we should do is to change direction now and talk in general about Nibiru Planet X and the claims surrounding that. Any questions about that? And I think that Astronomy Live would be able to expand on that a lot further than I can. I would like to do a little introduction to that, but first I will hand back over to you, Astronomy Live, to address that question.
Yeah, sorry, Daz. I caught that question in the chat, and I didn't want it to go unanswered. So somebody was asking about the size of the moon. Why is if the spacecraft is that far away from the moon, why is the moon that large? Well, the moon is actually much smaller than the sun in the image, but it's not a tiny speck, right? So it's actually the right size. If you look in the image here, it's a little hard to see, but you can see this ghost of the moon that is just to the right of the actual dark spot of the moon in the core 2 images. And you'll notice they are the same size. So what that tells you is that the apparent size of the moon in the core 2 images it's exactly what was predicted and expected based on the distance of the spacecraft from the moon at that time. The apparent size is just going to be a function of course, the physical size of the moon and the distance of the spacecraft. You can't ignore both of those factors. And those factors are, of course, accounted for in what's rendered in ORSA. What you're seeing in ORSA, this little ghost of the moon here, this is true to scale. This is true scale here. And the scale is calibrated based on the field of view of the core 2 imager, which again is rendered as the white outline. So to answer the question about why the moon is that size, that's the size it was supposed to be based on the distance of the spacecraft at that time. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to get that cleared away before we moved off the subject. So I'll hand it back to you now, as I am eager to get to a more general discussion of some of these claims.
Right. So just before I hand back to you to really expand on things for me, Astronomy Live, the question about Nibiru, is there Nibiru, Nemesis, Planet X, whatever you want to call it, in our solar system? I can confidently say no, there is no such object in our solar system or anywhere near our solar system out to Pluto. Now, why can I say this so confidently? Well, the reason is that we can see the planets Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, all with our naked eyes in visible light. We can also see the planets Uranus, Neptune, and even the dwarf planets such as Pluto, Eris, Makemake, and other objects with optical equipment in visible light. People often say, but Nibiru is only visible in infrared. Well, if Nibiru was real and it was a brown dwarf, then that would be true only because of the fact that the nearest brown dwarf is so very far away from our sun that it does not reflect enough visible light for it to be seen in the visible light spectrum. Therefore, we must use infrared to detect it. If there was a brown dwarf within our solar system or anywhere near us, it would be clearly visible in visible light. Even if it was too far out to be seen with the naked eye, like Neptune and Uranus are, it would still be visible using optical equipment in visible light. You would not need to use infrared to see it. As I say, just like we can see or image Pluto. I have imaged Pluto through a 14-inch telescope using visible light, not infrared. So the next point that I would come to is the recent announcement about what they're calling Planet 9, which some people are jumping to the conclusion is Planet X. Planet 9 is not Planet X, it is not Nibiru, it's not Nemesis, and it has not been discovered as some people like to believe. The announcement is based on mathematical conjecture, and as I recall off the top of my head, and you might need to correct me if I'm wrong, Astronomy Live, as I recall, they said that the orbital period is somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 years, if it exists at all. Now, when we know that there is an object out there, we can track its trajectory and provide the right ascension and declination coordinates for its path so that astronomers can point the telescopes in that direction and see the object. We would not say that the object has an orbital period of somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 years if we knew where it was, what it is, and what its trajectory was. So this just serves to confirm that Planet 9 is still pure conjecture. It has not been discovered. It hasn't even been imaged by the researchers who announced their research. So on that, Astronomy Live, I'll hand over to you, and please correct me if I've said anything wrong there.
Well, off the top of my head, I think everything you said was accurate. And you make a good point there about the fact that brown dwarf stars are imaged in infrared, generally because especially when they're single stars, when they're orbiting out in space by themselves, they don't reflect much visible light because there's not much visible light around to reflect. But if they were close to our sun, they would reflect visible light just like the gas giant planets do. And depending on whether they have significant cloud cover in their atmospheres or not, they're either going to reflect light in a manner similar to Jupiter or potentially one of the ice giants like Uranus or Neptune. It just depends on the atmospheric composition. But regardless, in either case, it is going to reflect visible light, and it would be, pretty readily detected, especially if it were anywhere particularly close to the inner planets. Now, I know you talked about Carlos Ferrada, and I hate to deflate one of your heroes there, but I have done some research into his claims, and he passed away in 2001, I believe it was. And there's a video that goes around the internet that's been quite viral. You'll find it all over the place if you Google Carlos Ferrada, and it's some documentary. I wish I could find more details about when that originally aired and on what station and all that. I would like to have the whole, unedited video, commercials and all. Just I want to see all of it. But from what I have seen of it, his claims aren't consistent. They're not internally consistent. Not even I'm not even talking about consistent with mainstream astronomy here, but they're just not even internally consistent in ways. For example, he gives figures for how quickly this object is traveling and how long it should take it to go around the sun and all of that. And it's rather well. Let me just lay out some figures for you. So he talks about an object traveling between us and some dead star that is about 32 billion kilometers away from us. And he gives velocities for this object. He calls it Hercolibus. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but something like Hercolibus, right? And he talks about the speed increasing when it's traveling between this dead star and our sun, up to about 300 kilometers per second. And at that velocity, it would get to us in about 3.38 years, if you do the math. And he quotes the slowest velocity it travels as being 76 kilometers per second. So there's your minimum velocity, and that can give you the maximum time that it would take to travel that distance. Well, at the distances he gives, that journey would only take 13.3 years. So it would be in a very short orbit if that were the case. And realistically, if it were traveling, say, 300 kilometers per second, it wouldn't remain in orbit. It would be flung out of the solar system, well above solar escape velocity. But even if we give him that somehow this is undiscovered physics and there's some unknown reason as to why it is able to travel at this velocity without being flung out into space, it doesn't make any sense, because the journey would take a very short period of time and it would constantly be going by the sun and back out, and everyone would know about it. Yet he talks about in the documentary the notion that this is going to be so dangerous in part because it hasn't been here in so long. So that's clearly inconsistent with his figures. The math just does not add up. He talked about the arrival date of this object, and this isn't something that you'll see in the documentary video, but if you do some more research on this, apparently he sent Brian Marsden a letter. And Brian Marsden, if you don't know, he was one of the head honchos over at the Minor Planet Center until he passed away. And he was, one of the leading experts in minor planets, and made some significant contributions to astrodynamics. But apparently this Carlos Ferrada guy sent him a letter, trying to warn the world about this incoming object. And he claimed that it was supposed to arrive in 1999. And that during a total solar eclipse that was going to happen in 1999, that the cause of the eclipse wouldn't really be the moon, that this was a lie created by astronomers, and that the real reason for the eclipse was going to be Hercolibus passing between Earth and the sun. And there was supposed to be an eclipse in 1999. I mean, that's not a conspiracy, but it really was just the moon. And of course, that eclipse occurred as predicted, and the world kept turning, and we're all still here. Now, I've tried to do some additional digging into this guy's history and his credentials, and I can't guarantee that he was the one that fluffed his resume like this, but somebody has definitely fluffed his resume and put in facts that are simply not true. For example, I've read on some websites the claim that he was the director of the Astronomical Observatory of Panama for 5 years. The only problem with that is that the Astronomical Observatory of Panama only opened its doors in 2011, 10 years after he passed away. And he was never the director of that observatory. He was never slated to be the director of that observatory. So that's an easily verifiable claim that is frankly false. Now, I don't know that he himself put that into his resume. It could have been somebody else after the fact. I mean, he's been gone now 15 years, but there's a lot of mythology. My point is just that there's a lot of mythology that surrounds him, and a lot of it just isn't even true. There's mythology that he made these incredible calculations about Halley's Comet, and that he accurately predicted that it was not going to reach its perihelion at the predicted time. That is to say, as it was approaching in the 1990s, that the dates that the astronomers were given for perihelion after its recovery were off, and that it moved ahead in its orbit. But that did not happen. If you look at the observations of Halley's Comet, you can look at the observations that were conducted not just by professional astronomers, but by amateur astronomers as well, both before and after perihelion. And you'll find that if you try to predict the perihelion time using either the data from before or after the perihelion, you'll come to the same answer. So that, that's definitely another claim that's easily verifiable. And that claim is given in the documentary, and it's frankly false. So you have to be critical and skeptical of what you accept as evidence. I mean, you really have to dig into these claims. And unfortunately, one aspect of this is that it takes a lot more time, a lot more time to disprove a false claim like this than it does to state a false claim like this. Anyone can make up facts like this, but it takes a lot more time to actually dig into them and find out whether those claims are true or not. And so it's a lot easier to simply repeat those claims or accept them on face value than it is to really do the work and research into it. And I understand, not everyone has experience doing these sorts of calculations, but in the case of Carlos Ferrada, a lot of the math is very, very simple. I mean, you basically just multiply and divide the numbers he gives, and the things just don't add up. So, I mean, I would be happy to find the whole documentary and see everything that he says, but a lot of the things he says, they simply don't add up. And in more general terms, a lot of these claims have to do with, a brown dwarf in the solar system on a 3,600-year orbit. It's like one of the most common running themes. The details of its orbit may change, the details of the arrival date may change, but in a lot of cases, it's stories about brown dwarfs coming into the inner solar system, some with planets that orbit them, that have, aliens living on them or whatever, but that's like a common theme. So one of the things I did some time ago was to do calculations of what a brown dwarf would do to the solar system over long periods of time as it orbits, passing through the inner planets. So here's a simulation I did in ORSA. Again, this is an integration of the solar system which accounts for the gravity of all these planets, and including Nibiru, which I set to be a minimum mass brown dwarf. So once you get to about 13 times Jupiter's mass, you start to fuse deuterium, which is like the easiest thing you can find in a star to fuse. And that fuel runs out very quickly. But for a brief time and early in its lifetime, a brown dwarf will undergo some fusion until it depletes its deuterium supply. And that starts around 13 times Jupiter's mass. So for a lot of astronomers, that's what they consider to be the lower cutoff of a brown dwarf. And anything below that is what they call a sub-brown dwarf. So let's just see what a 13 MJ, or 13 times the mass of Jupiter object would do to the solar system. And here's what you get. I mean, it just absolutely wrecks the planets. I mean, at this point, the moon is no longer orbiting Earth. Earth is in this extreme elliptical orbit, and you'll notice there should be something slightly familiar about this configuration, which is kind of interesting. You have Nibiru in this is Nibiru's orbit right here, this elliptical orbit right here. You have elliptical orbits of the various inner planets that have now been perturbed over just a few orbits of Nibiru. I mean, this is measured in thousands of years here, not millions of years. And in just that short period of time, Nibiru has already constrained the orbits of the planets into these elliptical orbits that are aligned opposite to itself. You might recognize this as being similar to charts you might see of the Planet 9 hypothesis. And that's the reason for that hypothesis to exist, because we're seeing this clustering of extreme trans-Neptunian objects, not planets, but extreme trans-Neptunian objects, dwarf planets that orbit far beyond Neptune, far beyond Pluto in most cases. And they seem to be in these elliptical orbits, and they seem to share a common longitude of the perihelion. So the perihelion point, where it's closest to the sun, seems to be co-aligned in a lot of these cases. There's this abnormal clustering, which seems to be statistically significant. So if that's not a fluke, that indicates something is constraining those orbits, because they should naturally vary. If this were not being caused by a planet, it ought to be randomly distributed, but it doesn't appear to be randomly distributed. So that's why the Planet 9 hypothesis exists. It's a hypothesis to try to explain that clustering and try to find an object that would cause that clustering. And so that object ends up being an object that doesn't pass all that close to the inner planets, but it does pass close enough to these dwarf planets. It stays in that outer region beyond the Kuiper Belt that it causes those objects to cluster together and have these elliptical orbits that are aligned opposite of itself. If you had a planet like that, or a massive, even a minimum mass brown dwarf passing through the inner planets, causing massive earthquakes, showing up in the sky, many times the size of the moon, all these disaster movie-like images, if that were happening, the same thing would have happened to the planets themselves. They would be perturbed into these elliptical orbits that would be aligned opposite of Nibiru. But obviously, that's not the way our solar system works. So that doesn't seem to be the case. And in fact, when astronomers have tried to look at potential Planet 9 scenarios that have it passing closer to the Kuiper Belt, the Kuiper Belt itself ends up being disrupted. So the Kuiper Belt is a region of icy objects and some dwarf planets like Pluto that are orbiting beyond Neptune. And if you have this Planet 9 passing through that region on a regular basis, you would get a disruption of that belt. And so we can pretty much set good minimum limits for how far away that thing has to stay to avoid disrupting the solar system. Because if it did, we wouldn't see a stable solar system like we see today. We wouldn't see planets in roughly circular orbits like we see today. It would end up looking more like what you see here, which is, of course, not the case. So in a very general sense, we can pretty much rule out the classical Nibiru scenario.
Right, and looking at that illustration with the orbits being thrown completely into chaos, that's with a brown dwarf passing through our solar system, and yet we can go and look at published data for future solar and lunar eclipses at any time, years ahead. These are in printed media, so they're not online; they can't be changed. Might be sitting on a bookshelf in a library or whatever, or somebody may actually even own a copy. And those details of the timings of those eclipses are there. And if there was an object that was passing through our solar system causing this sort of havoc, that would throw the timings out for all of these events, such as eclipses and transits of Mercury and Venus across the face of the sun. Yet what we see is that the published predictions for years ahead are still right on target. Would you agree with that, Astronomy Live?
Absolutely, and there will be a total solar eclipse, which a lot of people that are in the U.S. will be able to pretty easily get to. So there's going to be a total solar eclipse in 2017 that passes right through the continental United States, from coast to coast, and it's going to be a fantastic event. I highly recommend, if you live in the U.S., even if you have to drive a day, go out there and go see it. Take a day off work, take 2 days off work, and go get to the area of totality. There's a line of totality that crosses the continental United States, and there are a number of websites out there that can show you maps of exactly where that's going to pass, and you can find predictions of that eclipse in books that are a century old in some cases. And it will follow that prediction just as it should. And you can see it for yourself. Everyone can go see it for themselves. And I hope a lot of people do go see that event, because it is a fantastic opportunity. It's sort of a once in a lifetime opportunity for many people. And I do plan to go myself. I've never seen a total solar eclipse. I plan for that to be my first one.
Right, that sounds great. We had an almost total solar eclipse here just a couple of years ago, and that was quite something. I haven't seen a total solar eclipse myself. I certainly hope to see one at some stage in the future. Now, I think we probably need to think about wrapping this up. We've been going for an hour now, and I don't want this to run on too long for people. I would like to make one final point, though, that with all of these claims about Nibiru Planet X being out there in our solar system and people posting photos supposedly showing Nibiru Planet X, there is always one thing that is lacking. One vital piece of information that every astronomer would use, and those are the right ascension and declination coordinates of the object. As I mentioned earlier, when an object is discovered, it's imaged a few times, and Astronomy Live is very skilled at also doing this himself. The trajectory can be calculated of that object, and the future position in the sky can be calculated, and these are the right ascension and declination coordinates. So when people say that Nibiru is real, I always ask for the right ascension and declination coordinates so that I can point my telescope at it and try and see it. And of course, I know that they're not going to be able to provide those coordinates because the object isn't there. Your thoughts on that, Astronomy Live?
I always enjoy getting coordinates. I mean, there are the occasional claims that provide coordinates. Usually that goes to one of three things I see most commonly, and they're all things that you can find in Google Sky. So one of them is CW Leonis, which is a very bright, in infrared it's very bright, it's a carbon star, and in visible light it's basically invisible, but it's bright in infrared, so it shows up very brightly in the infrared layer of Google Sky and Microsoft Worldwide Telescope. So a lot of people will spread those coordinates around claiming that it's Nibiru, but you can go see that for yourself. If you have, especially if you have a CCD camera, which is sensitive to infrared light, and I happen to have one. So I've imaged CW Leonis myself. In fact, I did so at 2 different points in time, 6 months apart. And if it were an object in the solar system, we should see significant, really significant amounts of parallax, where the position of CW Leonis should shift noticeably relative to the background stars in images that are taken 6 months apart. But my telescope sees no difference. It's exactly in the same position in both images. I've got an 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, and even though it's not as large as some professional observatories, for solar system objects, it would definitely see a huge amount of shift there, but it's just not there because it's a distant star, light years away. The second thing would be a blacked out area on Google Sky's infrared layer, which I commonly see those coordinates. They actually correspond to the coordinates of Saturn when those images were taken. The images that Google Sky uses for the infrared layer come from the IRAS telescope, which mapped the entire sky in infrared in 1983. It had a limited supply of cryogenic cooling to keep that detector cold enough to detect these far infrared wavelengths. And when that coolant ran out, the mission was over. So they had to map the whole sky very quickly. And unfortunately, Saturn was basically in the way. And they passed over the position of Saturn on 2 different dates. And so you had this double image of Saturn in the completed map. So the later versions of that map actually blacked out that area. But if you go to the original raw data, you can still find it. It's not censored in the original data. But unfortunately, Google, they're not an astronomy company. They didn't really know to go to the original map to get that data. So there's just a black area there. And there's something that looks like there's something peeking out from behind it. It's actually glare from the planet Saturn. And you can confirm that those coordinates correspond to where IRAS would have seen it in 1983. The third thing that I see somewhat frequently would be the missing area of Google Sky in the visible layer, which is near the constellation Orion. There's a patch of Google Sky that's missing, and it's simply due to a glitch in Google Sky. Again, the original images are not censored. I've actually gone and found the original photographic negative of that image, the actual missing image. So those images that are in visible light from Google Sky, most of them come from the Palomar Sky Survey, as well as the Southern Hemisphere counterpart to the Palomar Sky Survey, which was photographed down there in Sighting Spring, Australia. So with 2 sister telescopes, one in the Northern Hemisphere, one in the Southern Hemisphere, the entire sky was mapped in visible light decades ago. And that was done with actual film plates. And so just like any other film, they had to develop negatives, then they had to make positives, etc. Google Sky uses those images. They didn't set up their own telescopes. They just used what was already out there, including the Palomar Sky Survey images. And they stitched them together into a giant mosaic. And unfortunately, their software didn't quite work right, and it left off this area of the sky. And you can go find the original plate, the missing image. You can find it in certain libraries around the world. And I went up to Ohio and found the negative for that image and took pictures of it and showed that there was nothing mysterious there. I also took pictures of those coordinates with my own telescope and compared it to that original photographic negative and showed that it's a perfect match. There's nothing there that's moved. Everything's accounted for there. So they weren't trying to hide anything because you can find the photographic image. It's just a glitch. It's fun for me. I enjoy getting coordinates like that when it's something new, especially because it's an opportunity to actually use my telescope, pull it out, and take pictures of something in the sky. Even if there's nothing there, you at the end of the night, you still end up with the pretty pictures of the stars, if nothing else. So I do enjoy getting the coordinates. It's unfortunate that most of these claims don't come with coordinates or orbital elements attached to them.
And just to clarify that you made, you talked about imaging CW Leonis over 6 months. And you talked about the parallax. Just to explain on that, what we're talking about here is that obviously 6 months on from any point in time, we're going to be on the other side of the sun. So the Earth is 93 million miles, or 150 million kilometers from the sun. That means that in 6 months' time, we're going to be 186 million miles, or 300 million kilometers from where we were when we started. So you take some images, say in June, and you take some images in December, there's going to be 300 million kilometers difference between the 2 points that those were taken. It's a bit like if you hold your finger out in front of your face and you close one eye and close the other, you can see a shifting of your finger if you hold it close to your nose. It's the same sort of thing with the parallax. This is what Astronomy Live is talking about. So he imaged CW Leonis 6 months apart, and there was no movement. If the object was in close, then there would have been significant movement. Am I correct in that analysis?
Exactly right. Yep, exactly right.
Right. Now, okay, and just winding this up, I think we better bring in Scott from Nibiru News, Nibiru Planet X 2016. Would you like to make any final comment on anything here? Maybe your views about the discussion of whether there is a Nibiru Planet X within our solar system that can be photographed and so on, based on what we've discussed here. Scott? Okay, well, it looks like Scott is still in the Hangout, but I don't know if he's got his mic muted or has fallen asleep or something, but anyway, getting no reply there. So I guess we will wind this up unless there are any other comments that you'd like to make, Astronomy Live.
I think we covered just about everything. You know, at least a nice overview of the subject. So, thanks for hosting it again, Daz. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, and as always, we would always welcome open, balanced, and respectful discussion from anyone who is making claims about Nibiru Planet X, or for that matter, any astronomy-related topic that we can provide our input on. We'd host them, we'd welcome them, and just as Scott from Nibiru News, Nibiru Planet X 2016 has joined us, and we've had a respectful discussion, we would be happy to do that with anyone else. Please note, Steve.
If you want to hold on for a moment, Daz, I think Scott is trying to talk, but he's having issues with his microphone because he is muting and unmuting.
Go ahead.
Scott, we're not able to hear you, but if you are trying to talk, you might want to refresh it by hitting F5. It'll make you rejoin the window and refresh everything, and that should clear up any problems that you're having right now.
Okay, we'll just give Scott a chance to rejoin us. And my train of thought has just gone. So now, Astronomy Live mentioned VORTEX earlier. So this is my Facebook page. VORTEX stands for Voices of Reason to Explain X. You'll always find a link on my YouTube channel to VORTEX. Everyone is welcome to join, and people are encouraged to post items there that they don't understand, that they're curious about, and the Voices of Reason on the page will do their best to explain and provide evidence to prove that their explanation is correct. Scott, are you with us now? I see he's just disappeared.
Yeah, he's doing the F5 thing to refresh the screen.
Right. So check that out on Facebook, Voices of Reason to Explain X, and I see that Scott has just rejoined us. Scott.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, how am I able to share some photographs with you real quick? Just about 4 or 5 photographs. Give me your point of view on them.
Sean?
All right. If you mouse over the Hangout window, you'll see a bar on the left side of the screen pop up.
Yeah, I'm on there now.
And you'll see the second one down is a green screen with an arrow on it.
Yes.
If you click on that, it's to share screens, and then it'll pop up another window with a whole bunch of windows in it, depending on how many you have open. Select the screen that you want to share. And then when you say share screen, it'll show that instead of your picture.
Okay. Let's try this out here. Can you see that photograph?
I think you might have hit cancel. It's not sharing. It's still got your camera on.
Let's see here.
And you're sharing, but it's still black. There we go.
How about that?
Yep, you're sharing your desktop.
Okay, guys, this is what I get. I got a photograph like this from a lady, kind of an amateur photographer. She mentioned, I forget how she photographed this. Have you ever seen anything like this before?
I've seen somewhat similar. I've seen somewhat similar effects when having a defocused star. It looks like kind of like what I would expect if I had really badly collimated optics and a defocused star in the view. I would need more details about how it was photographed, what equipment was used, the exposure information, all of that information to make a better conclusion.
Yeah, I was trying to find the original email because there were 2 other photographs that that she had sent me. Let me just see something here. There was a couple more that I just wanted to run by you. And these, can you see that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Now these are the average all sky cam photographs. They come from that website. I get these all day long. These pink spherical shapes, you know, they're in a time-lapsed form. They come in a variety of sizes depending on where they're located, you know, in the world. And some of the biggest ones I get from Australia, like this one here, Savannah Skies, Australia. Any ideas, guys? Please tell me what that is.
Yeah, I'll speak into this one. I've looked at these all-sky cameras, video claims in the past, and as I recall, I think I did a series of videos back in January of this year. It might have been last year. And I actually downloaded a piece of software from NIRSoft, I think it was called NIRSoft, if I remember correctly. And that allowed me to continuously download the latest images from multiple webcams on that web page, so that I had a complete sequence of images throughout the day. And what we see is these objects, which are supposedly Nibiru, such as the pink flare that we see in your image there. What we see is it crossing the sky and then actually coming down onto the ground, and in some cases even inside the camera housing. It is a lens flare. It's caused by the sun, or in some cases the bright moon. And the other thing that you have to remember is that these cameras are set to auto exposure. So during the daytime, they're exposed for daytime conditions. During the nighttime, they're exposed to see the stars. So when they're looking at the sky at nighttime, the moon is going to be horrendously overexposed, is going to look very, very bright, and is going to create a lens flare, just as we see in that image. In one of the other images you just flicked on before, we saw the moon, which was a crescent, and I could see straight away that image was terribly overexposed. Scott?
Yeah, I hear you.
So one other thing I'd like to just make a quick comment about with the all-sky camera images. So I'll give away a little something about myself, perhaps too much, but I'm also a scientific advisor for itelescope.net, which provides rental time on telescopes around the world. They also run a number of all-sky cameras at each of those sites. And, you know, it's a company that's owned by amateur astronomers, basically, you know, really serious amateurs. I guess you could call them professionals because they do it for a living, but they're not, you know, professionals in the classical sense. We're a team of amateur astronomers who run these systems. And, you know, but even so, we're happy to answer questions about these kinds of things. Like if you would email, just for example, that's from Savannah Skies. That's not from the Australian site that we have. We've got one at Sighting Spring. And, you know, if it were the Sighting Spring camera and you saw that, and you were to email the people who run that camera down there in Australia at iTelescope, they'd be happy to tell you that's a lens flare. Most of the time what's happening with these images So they're being seen by, lay people on the AllSkyCam website. That comes, these images come from many different sources, and they're opining on them themselves. But oftentimes, it's a simple thing to just email the person who's actually running the camera, who actually owns the camera, and they can tell you exactly many of the things that you see in those images.
Well, alrighty then, we have that cleared up.
And just further to that, the images that I mentioned that I saved, I've still got those on my computer. I had intended to make a follow-up video about that, which I should do at some stage, but I'd be more than happy to pull up those images in a private Skype chat with you sometime when I've got them on hand, and actually show you the sequence of images. I should also point out that those all-sky cameras, normally you only see, I think it's about 5 or 6 images at a time, and you have to keep refreshing the page to see the latest image that's since been taken. So that the software that I use, as I say, it captured the image every minute or 2 minutes, whatever it was, so that I could have a complete uninterrupted sequence from whichever camera. So
actually, it's funny you should mention that, because I'm actually writing a program right now to do exactly that for the iTelescope all-sky cameras. Currently, the Australian all-sky camera is automatically archived every night, but I'm writing a program to do that on a more general basis across multiple cameras, webcams that we have on the iTelescope network. And I'm hoping, this is a long-term plan, but I'm hoping to have that set to a system that will automatically upload it to a YouTube channel dedicated to that purpose, so you'll have a constant running archive of multiple cameras, which will be a useful resource for things like this as well.
Right, and just to confirm, the software that I've been using is called NIRSoft, NIRSoft, and it's called Seek Download. That's SEQ for sequence. Seek Download, NIRSoft Seek Download. So that can be used for these all-sky cameras, and you'll see that they are just lens flares when you use them.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through here. So I mean, you guys can see the amount of photographs that I get, and this is just a small, minuscule, nothing. And these people are, none of them are professional photographers. They're using sunglasses, welding lenses, which I know you'll get the double reflection and the flare. But I had this one photograph. God, I can't find it. It's got to be around somewhere. But it was a large. Oh my God! It looked like a large metallic. You're probably going to laugh at this, but it looked like a large metallic potato in the sky, and the image was and it was captured on one of these sky cams from this all sky cam network. I can't find the image. I have to go through it, and I'll email it to you. And for the life of me, nobody knows what it is. And it appears in several of the Australian sky cams in different locations in the country. So, it can't be a lens flare, because it's a large silver metallic pitted. It almost looks like a massive asteroid, but it's in the blue sky. In some of the photographs, you can see cloud cover over it as it passes in the time lapse. But any idea on what something like that would be? I mean, it has puzzled my mind, and just it's just pretty mind blowing. But I mean, any idea what something like that could possibly be?
Well, the first question I'd be asking is, have you gone to the source and actually verified the authenticity of the image, or is it just an image that has been sent to you?
No, I captured it myself,
right,
on the all Skycam network, and I screenshotted it, and I have so many files in here. I don't know which one I put it in, but I screenshotted it a couple of times, refreshed my screen, and then that's when I saw the cloud cover moving over it. It kind of went all the way over it, And then after I refreshed about 15 minutes later, it had moved across the sky. And then I immediately flipped over to another sky cam and caught another portion of it. But I mean, for the life of me, Dave, I don't know what this thing is. Right. I mean, it's silver, metallic, and it's just a very odd shape, like a big potato. And it was all pitted, right. But it was, you know, it had a little bit of a shine to it because you could see the sun reflecting off of it. You can see the shadowing on it. And I mean, I don't know what, it was just so massive that I'm sure if you were standing on the ground anywhere near that camera or anywhere around the surrounding area, you would have had to have seen that in the sky.
Exactly. And that's the point I was going to make next, is that for an object like to be in the sky, and we're talking about in space, not in your local sky, then, you know, at any time on the Earth, 1/2 of the world can see the sun, 1/2 of the world can see the moon. Okay, so if there was really an object in space, say this object that you're talking about was actually out there in space, then 1/2 of the world should be able to see it. Exactly. And in this age of people with cell phone cameras and video cameras and webcams and all sorts of things, if something strange suddenly appeared in the real sky, then you would bet that there would be lots of people looking up and say, what the heck is that? And getting their mobile phone cameras out and taking pictures and videos of it, okay? But where you've got an object that appears on one webcam, and I find it interesting, you said that you flicked over to another camera.
Yeah.
You know, usually these things just appear on one camera, unless, of course, it's a lens flare, because a lens flare will appear on multiple cameras. So what I'd like is for you to send that picture to me, the picture or pictures, if there are more than one, and I'll take a look at them, and maybe we could follow up with a video looking at those images and see if we can try and work out what's going on there.
Yeah, I also have another one that we got a photograph of, and once again, it was a very, very large, kind of rocky looking sphere with a huge triangular chunk missing out of it. And I mean, it was near the sun, and it was illuminated on one side and kind of, you know, darkening on the other side. That photograph I'll get to you also, because that's been another one of my nightmare photographs. You know, just me wondering, what is that? You know, and if something was that large in a daytime sky, then, you know, the telephones at the news station should have been ringing off the hook. And
right.
Yeah, you know, and it boggles my mind sometimes, you know, that how are these photographs being taken, and they're being sent to me from all over the world. And, you know, the majority of them are very easy to debunk, you know, especially if somebody's trying to use a pair of sunglasses to block the rays of the sun. Well, you know, number one, your sunglasses are probably scratched up. You know, the majority of sunglasses are made of plastic, which is not going to, you know, it's not going to do too well for your optics. But this photograph that I have here, I took this photograph myself. Didn't even notice this sphere in the photograph till a month later, when I was about to dump photographs out of my phone. And I took that with my cell phone. And what confused me once again is, you know, how can I get that translucent sphere with a cloud in front of it?
That looks to me like a lens flare.
But you can see where I get confused. You know what I mean? I would expect that, you know, the cloud cover would not even come into play.
Well, it certainly looks to me like the lens flare is in front of the cloud, not the other way around. I mean, I can see the coloration on the cloud from that flare in front of it.
Man, I wish I could have you guys around all the time. You'd make my life a lot easier. You know what I mean? My God.
Well, we're always happy to help. You know, that's the thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, you know, Dave, I'm gonna get these these big rocky metallic objects that have been photographed. I'm going to get those over to you sometime either today or tomorrow, and share them with Astronomy Live. And you see, I got your name right this time. But share them with him, and give me an idea what these damn things are, because I've had the photographs for a couple of months now, and I think about them every day. Like, what is this? So I'll shoot them over to you sometime within the next 24 hours, and give me a little feedback on them. And it's been a pleasure with all of you guys today. I'm glad we were able to clear some things up, and I appreciate all your professionalism. Like I said earlier, it was so nice to sit down and speak with some real gentlemen that they're not going to sit there and call you names and call you a liar and a fraud and every other freaking name in the book. Like, I'm sure you understand what happens in the comment section of these videos. But I appreciate all your kindness today. Absolutely.
Well, you're welcome, Scott. We're happy to help. And just one more thing too about some of those images that we see, and I see that Astronomy Live has got a good example up there. He's probably going to expand on that. I'll just let you pull that one up there, Astronomy Live.
How do I give the screen back to you, or I don't bother?
You can either hit the stop sharing button, or if you don't want to stop sharing, if you got other stuff to present, you can just highlight Astronomy Live's name. That way his screen will override yours.
Okay, I think I exited out.
No, you're still sharing. You exited out of the window that you were sharing. There you go. Now you're
here we go. Thank you, Sean. You just taught me something that I didn't know. So you can hear me now, can't you?
There you go.
So we've got. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, you might be about to talk about the same thing that I was going to talk about, and that is the finger test. We often see these images that apparently show two suns or Nibiru next to the sun or whatever, and there is a very simple test that you can use to check when you're actually filming these images whether the object is real or not. Normally, a lens flare will move all around the place when you move the camera. It'll go crazy all over the screen. But a secondary internal reflection will actually remain in the same place relative to the sun, making it look like it's a real object. So all that you need to do is extend your hand out in front of the camera and hold up your index finger and block out the sun and see if that secondary object next to the sun still remains. The second part of the test is to shift your finger over to where the object appears to be. And if it superimposes over the top of your finger, then obviously it is an internal lens reflection, a type of lens flare. I should also point out that if you're actually inside a building filming out through windows, especially double glazing, this test will not work because the windows are in front of the camera and your finger will be between the camera and the windows. You would actually need to go outside and film without the double glazing or the window so that you're filming directly to the sun. And in that case, you probably wouldn't even see the second object. But if you did, you would just use the finger test to verify that the object is real or not. So far, I've not seen one video that has actually shown a real object next to the sun. It has always been a secondary reflection. Astronomy Live? I'm
going to send you one because I have that video. I have several videos of the finger test. I did it myself on this massive object that I see that moves around the sun periodically during the different times of the day. The red filtered photographs that you saw streaming across the screen there that I was just going by. I photographed this large sphere pretty much from the 12 o'clock position of the sun, moving on down 10, 9, 8, and then by that time it's sunset and it's pretty well gone. But I've done the finger test, and it stays right there in the test. I've videotaped it. I've used a a very dark piece of paper instead of my finger, and it stays right there. And I've been doing some tests on what this is, and I do it by the hour. I have one spot marked on the sidewalk, so I go and I stand in the same spot so I maintain the consistency. And I've been photographing this, whatever it is, the entire summer, June, July, August, September. It has changed in size. Earlier this summer, it was very small, maybe like the size of a little pinhead. But now that we are into the month of October, it is much larger. So I have the video of that. I'll shoot that over to you, and maybe I'm doing something wrong, but I was tipped off to the finger test, and like I said, I took it a step further. I used a very dark piece of plastic. You can't see through it. It's completely you can't see through it at all. But I used this little square piece of plastic to hold up in front of the camera to block the sun, and that object stayed right there. And then the next hour, it was down to about the 10 o'clock position. The next hour, it was down to about the 9 o'clock position. And then as far down as the 8 o'clock position. And then after that, the sun's down and it's gone. So any ideas on that, or am I just doing the test wrong?
Well, again, we'll be more than happy to look at your videos and see what's going on there. And again,
Okay.
like at the moment, it is 1:15 in the afternoon. It's a bright sunny day at the moment, which makes a nice change. And I can go out with any of my cameras and use a suitable solar filter or the finger test and just double check for myself, because Scott from over in the US is apparently seeing an object next to the sun. So Dazza over in New Zealand should be able to go out and see the same object next to the sun. But I can tell you that when I go out and check for objects next to the sun, I never see anything. All I see is the sun. So that tells me it's going to come down to the optics in your camera, or something is going on there. But like I say, send us the video and we'll be more than happy to take a look at it.
Okay, sounds good, Dave. Fair enough.
Yeah, Astronomy Live.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I just wanted to point out, so a lot of people, and I'm not saying that Nibiru News is using this as the proof, but a lot of people do. They'll wave the camera around, and so this is footage I shot, and I deliberately shot it a little shaky on purpose to prove the point that, okay, you have the sun here in the center, and then up and to the right of the sun, just up and to the right of the sun, you have a reflection of the sun, which doesn't appear to move like the lens flares move. So as I wiggle the camera around, you can see the lens flares jiggling all over the place. But the object that you might call Nibiru or second sun, whatever, it appears to remain stationary in the sky as I wiggle the camera around. It's pretty convincing as an effect. And all I had to do to generate this was use a pair of UV filters on the front of the camera, and I deliberately cross-threaded them very slightly. And so they weren't screwed on straight. They were just slightly cross-threaded. And so as a result of this, you get an offset reflection of the sun, which is stationary even as I wiggle the camera around. The only way to basically prove that this is really not a real object in the sky, that the confirmation is to do the finger test like you described as, and the key to the finger test is that it has to be done with your finger or the object that's blocking the second sun. It has to be completely outside of all glass elements, all possible sources of reflection. You can also rotate the camera. I don't do that in this particular video. I'm going to do a video about this. I recorded a number of videos at this sunset that you see here. I'm going to put that into a video sometime later when I have some time to put it all together. And I did do the finger test at one point. It's not in this particular clip. That I don't have that clip uploaded to YouTube yet, unfortunately. And the way that the sharing software is, it's not letting me share the raw video. But you will see the finger test occurring in the ultimate finished video that uses this clip, and you'll see how that works. Like I said, the other thing you can do is rotate the camera. If the filter is physically attached to the camera, like it was in my case, when you rotate it, this is going to remain stationary even though the scene is rotating. So that gives away the fact that it's not real. Said is the finger test, and I did do the finger test in this clip over here. So just as a quick demonstration, this was shot on a different day. It was a lot cloudier, and notice it's hard to see. I wish I could bump up the contrast here because you can actually see what looks like some clouds in front of the second sun in this case, which is much smaller and dimmer than the actual sun because of the clouds. And what you're actually seeing, it's very convincing looking, but it's actually a reflection of the clouds that are truly in front of the sun right now. And if you have a small object, if you have a small faint object that passes in front of the second sun, like this bird here, he's actually going to pass in front of this second sun here, and it'll look to your eye as if the bird actually is in front of the filter flare. It will look like the bird is in front of it, and it is therefore a real object. It's very momentary. He comes back around here in a second. As he swings back around, he'll pass in front of it, and it will look like, oh my goodness, he was in front of it, and he blocked it. Well, he didn't really block it. It's sort of an optical illusion with the eye. You really have to completely obscure it, like I do with my hand right here. So you can see as my hand comes into the view, and I'm struggling here to hold both a heavy SLR camera in one hand and hold up my hand with the other. There we go. So you can see the second sun is in front of the palm of my hand, and the palm of my hand is starting to block the actual sun, which is why you see the edge of it starting to flatten off here. But it's clearly in front of my hand, so it's clearly not a real object. So I just wanted to show that demonstration of the finger test so people can see what we're talking about.
Right, well, I think we should probably wind up here. We've been going for over an hour and a half now, which has been quite a good effort. Scott, as I mentioned, your follow-up video did fail to mention that it was, in fact, a moon, so I don't know if you would be prepared to do another follow-up video just to clarify that, because I suspect that there may still be a lot of people out there who are going, oh my God, there's something passing through the solar system, which of course is not the case. And we don't want people fearful and deciding that they can't face this non-existent object and harming themselves or doing anything like that. But anyway, I'll leave that up to you. I'll give you credit for fronting up, for removing the original video, and for being such a gentleman. So thank you for that, Scott.
Oh, no problem, Dave. Like I said, it was a pleasure, getting a chance to meet you and talk to you. And, same thing with Astronomy Live. I wish all of the conversations were this constructive and, I wish everything would go this smoothly. But in this community, the Nibiru community, it just doesn't work this way. So this was very refreshing. I liked it very, very much. And I appreciate you lending some help with some of these photographs that I'm very unsure of. And I will get you that video footage over for you to check out, and those photographs. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I imagine that you're going to be facing quite a storm from the Nibiru Planet X community. There'll be accusations that they got to you and that we are paid disinformation agents, government shills, and all the rest of it. I've seen this all before, of course. So that just goes with the territory. So prepare yourself for that. There'll be a storm you can expect.
I've already got the emails. I've already read the comments, and I really don't follow that stuff, Dave. I go by the way that people treat me. If you treat me like a man and a gentleman and civilized, then you can be whoever you want to be. But the minute these people come at me in the wrong way, well, I'm a human being. I will go on the defense, and when you back me into a corner, well, you know what? You're probably going to end up getting the wrath of God from me. But I enjoyed the way that you approached the subject, and like I said, it was like a gentleman, not a thug, and that's what you deal with in the YouTube chats and the comment sections, and I'm sure you have that experience the same as I do. If everybody can be like we were here today, this would be fantastic. where you can collaborate with all of your information like grown-ass men instead of little children and thugs, because that's basically what I have in the comment section of my chat room. Matter of fact, right now as we're sitting here talking, I have one of the most notorious ones is emailing me all kinds of ridiculous things. I think he just said something about, I don't know, some executive from Sechi is supposed to be getting in touch with me to file charges against me because I'm a fraud. So this is the kind of crap that I deal with on a daily basis. And I doubt very highly if anybody from NASA wants to talk to me.
Yeah, so good luck with that one. That wouldn't be the Destroyer Star by any chance, would it?
No, this individual goes by the name of Rene Padilla, right. Which is a fake. It's a fake name. You know, he's all over. I'm sure he'll be contacting you within the next few minutes. Well,
I've seen that the Destroyer Star is already all over your channel making comments about how Dazza is a known government shill and that he's been outed and all the rest of it. Well, the Destroyer Star, here is my invitation to you. Front up on a live YouTube Hangout, just as Scott from Nibiru News has, and let's hear your evidence that I am a paid disinformation agent, and we'll discuss your claims about Nibiru Planet X, and we'll see where that goes. And I promised to treat you with the same respect that I've treated Scott from Nibiru News.
Hey, Dave.
So
one thing. Well, listen, if you if you do happen to be a government employee, at least you have good benefits. I'm sorry, I just have to make light of that because, I mean, anybody who's a government paid shield, troll, whatever you want to call them, they're not going to be at your education level and your sophistication. They're thugs.
Well, the Destroyer Star seemed to overlook the point that if I was indeed a government disinformation agent, paid shill, whatever, then surely I would have been able to remove his comments from YouTube where he's supposedly exposing me for being a shill, shut down his YouTube channel, and would probably never hear from him again.
I know, right?
I'm quite a powerless government disinformation agent that I don't have these abilities to shut people down. I have to argue in the comments just like everybody else.
Yeah. Is that a real job title, a disinformation agent? Is there a real title?
I'm not too much into conspiracies, but I imagine that there are circumstances where disinformation is put out there by government agencies for political purposes or whatever. We've heard lots of stories about the CIA and things that have gone down, and arms that have been sold to the other side and that sort of thing. I say that I'm not into conspiracies. Sure, there are real conspiracies. We remember Watergate and things like that. But this is a whole other different subject. So, yeah.
Well, it's been enlightening, fellas.
Yeah. So let's close this out. Thank you, Astronomy Live, for joining us and your input on that. And thank you, Sean Hufford, for helping us with the technical side. And once again, thank you, Scott, from Nibiru Planet X 2016. And maybe we can do another Hangout sometime soon.
Okay, guys, you take it easy.